All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a great week. Today we're continuing our BCBA exam review of our fourth BCBA practice exam, where we're going through the next 10 questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, check out behavioranalyststudy.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and of course, our famous combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. As always, work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. 101. Every morning, Jamie stops at Mocha Joe's for a cup of coffee and a scone. When she placed her order this morning, Jamie was told Mocha Joe's no longer sells scones. Jamie now has to go elsewhere for her morning breakfast. Jamie's behavior change most represents a what? So, behavior questions. What we're doing first is identifying whose behavior we're looking at and in what context. That's where people often get tripped up. They don't recognize the antecedents, the consequences, and they don't pick the right behavior. In this case, it's pretty straightforward because we're just looking at Jamie's behavior, and specifically her behavior change. Well, how did Jamie's behavior change? Previously, she would go to Mocha Joe's and get a scone. Today, she placed her order. She was then told Mocha Joe's no longer sells scones, so now she has to go somewhere else. So, has her current behavior been altered or her future? Well, since her behavior was altered by a consequence, we're concerned with future behavior. Now, let's look at our answer choices. A and B are behavior altering, establishing, and abolishing operations. Now, we know motivating operations are what? We know they're antecedents. And motivating operations have a temporary effect on behavior change. Motivating operations don't permanently change behavior. However, a consequence will permanently change the future behavior. And that's why we consider it a function altering effect. Since Jamie's behavior was put on extinction, she's now going to alter her behavior in the future. So the extinction, the consequence, permanently has changed Jamie's behavior. It is not negative reinforcement, of course, because Jamie's behavior was not reinforced. Previously, when she ordered a scone, she got a scone. Now she ordered a scone, no reinforcement was delivered. The consequence has altered Jamie's future behavior for good, making her behavior change or the result of her behavior change, a function altering effect. Make sure you understand that, right? MOs are antecedents. They're temporary effects on behavior. Consequences have function altering effects. They have permanent effects on behavior. 102. The CEO of a marketing company tells his team that they are going to brainstorm ideas today. He says that every idea someone says out loud, they will receive $1 no matter what. What type of lag schedule does this represent? Okay, let's talk about lag schedules again because we don't talk about these a lot. They're not used a lot, but they're very, very effective. And you want to know what they mean. All the lag schedule says is if you have, let's say, 3 participants and you give a lag schedule of 1, then each answer has to be different than the previous answer. If you give a lag schedule of 2, then each answer has to be different than the last 2 questions, so on and so forth. If you have a lag schedule of 0, then each answer doesn't have to be different than the previous answer. So if you're doing categories and you say, give me fruit, and you have a lag of 0, well, they can just say apples over and over again. If you have a lag of 1, if they say apples, the next answer has to be different. And that's essentially all a lag schedule is. Very straightforward. In this case, the CEO of the marketing company says, every idea someone says out loud, they will receive $1 no matter what. So there's no stipulation. They don't have to change the idea. It can be the same idea. It doesn't matter. So what type of lag schedule does it represent? Well, lag 0 seems like our best bet. A lag 1 would say the next idea needs to be different than the last. Lag 2 would say the next idea needs to be different than the last 2. Lag 3, next idea different than the last 3. So on and so forth. If the idea doesn't matter and they can just repeat the same ideas over and over, well, we are faced with a lag 0 schedule. 103. Veronica is sitting at her desk trying to do her math homework. Her mom notices her counting on her fingers, so she says, Veronica, use your calculator, and slides the calculator closer to Veronica. This represents a what? What is occurring in this scenario? Let's break it down. Veronica is sitting at her desk trying to do her math homework. Her mom sees her counting on her fingers, so she says, Veronica, use your calculator. Let's call that our SD. So if that's our SD, sliding the calculator closer is going to be what? Going to be a prompt. And this is the importance of when we get these applied behavior questions to identify SDs, consequences, prompts. If you do that, they become so much easier. Most of the time, I see people who understand the concepts miss behavior questions because they misinterpret what they're looking at. Veronica, use your calculator is our SD. Sliding the calculator closer is our prompt. So if we're sliding the calculator, are we acting on the stimulus or the response? Well, the stimulus, right? So does it represent a gestural prompt? Is the mom pointing and looking and gesturing? She is not. She is changing to position of the stimulus, making it a B, a positional prompt. It isn't positive reinforcement because it's not a consequence, and it isn't a verbal prompt. Veronica, use your calculator is the SD, not the prompt. Sliding the calculator closer is the prompt. So this represents a positional prompt. Very easy question if you can identify the parts, right? It's like the parts of a sentence. Same idea. You have to identify the parts of your behavior contingency. If you can do that, it's a very straightforward question. If not, it becomes a little more tricky. 104. A functional analysis was conducted for multiple behaviors as it was hypothesized that each behavior served different functions. Based on the graph, what function does self-injurious behavior serve? And this is straight from Cooper. So we're going to be analyzing a graph here, and you will have graphs on the exam that you do need to analyze. In this case, we're looking at the behavior of self-injury. So when you have a graph, make sure you know what you're looking for on that graph. We're looking at self-injurious behavior and trying to identify the function. Given that it's a functional analysis, okay, we're going to be looking at data points from different conditions. So let's go down to our graph and try to find self-injury. So the first one is non-compliance. We're not worried about that. The second is aggression. Again, not worried about that. And if you can eliminate those two options, we can just go straight to self-injury. That's all has to do with analyzing what the question wants. Okay. The question is not concerned with non-compliance and aggression. Do not get bogged down by this quote unquote complicated looking graph when all you're worried about is self-injury. Let's go right to self-injury and analyze. Well, we see we have our control condition, free play, and it barely happened, right? Contingent escape, again, almost never. Contingent attention, however, has some significant data points. So if we were going to say, well, what function does self-injury serve? Really, the only answer we can choose is attention, because in our other conditions, it never occurred. So escape, no, because it doesn't occur. Attention, yes. Automatic, well, no, automatic typically represents either in control or overlap. And that didn't happen. And then cannot determine. Well, we can determine. Because if we're looking at self-injurious behavior, we're looking at contingent attention, which is the clear pick for why this behavior is possibly occurring. 105. Dana takes a job as an autism resource room teacher at her local public school. Dana has 10 students, so she designs discontinuous measurement procedures to track each student's on-task behavior during test taking. What would be the most efficient discontinuous measurement procedure to use? Now, the key word here, all right, is efficient. She can use a variety of discontinuous procedures without a problem. We want the most efficient, meaning if she has to measure all 10 students, what is going to be the best way to do that, right? So we know we have a group scenario here, and we're tracking student on-task behavior. So let's look at A, whole interval. With whole interval, that requires Dana to measure and observe every student the entire time she's taking data, right? So either she needs to cut down her intervals to be extremely short, or there's just no way she can measure whole interval on 10 students at the same time. Okay, so whole interval, is it possible? Yes. Is it going to be the most efficient? Probably not. What about momentary time sampling? Momentary time sampling is much better, right? Because this gives her the ability to do other things and then look up at the end of the interval and see if the participant is, or the learner is engaged. But what's even better than momentary time sampling for a group? Well, how about a planned activity check, a play check? Play check is just a type of momentary time sampling used in a group. And in this case, we have 10 students. So why use momentary time sampling and not the group measure? So the group measure is going to be better, and it's going to be more efficient than whole interval. And then average duration, well, duration is not discontinuous, so we can immediately eliminate that. With all that said, what's going to be the most efficient? Well, play check. Momentary time sampling is fine, but play check is just the group version of momentary time sampling, making it the better answer. Whole interval is discontinuous. However, it's not going to be very efficient for 10 students. 106, Gray Elementary School implements a school-wide behavior system. The youngest kids are typically offered the most assistance, but are given the least amount of freedom as rewards. As the kids transition into later grades, they are offered less help, but given more freedom as a reward. This is most like a what? Now, this is very close to the definition of this system, okay? This is kind of just a fluency check for you, right? And sometimes those are good for practice. So if we have this system, it's school-wide, and it moves up, right, as the kids move into later grades. And as the system develops, they're given more independence and more freedom. What are we going to consider that? Hey, a contingency contract. Do we have any indication that this is a contract? Have they signed anything? Have they agreed on anything? No, there's no indication this is actually a contingency contract. Now, they might have the kids all sign behavior contracts. We don't know. There's no information indicating that's the case. So don't add information that isn't there. Be a level system. Yes, a level system simply says you have multiple levels, and as kids move up levels, right, you fade reinforcement, but you offer more independence and you offer better rewards. That's essentially what's happening here. It might be a token economy system, right? A level system often fits into a token economy system, but it's not going to be a basic token economy system. If it is, it's a level system, right? Level system's the better answer. And then a response cost system. There's no indication, again, that we're using any sort of response cost here. So A and D, don't be distracted. Just tell yourself there's no information here that would lead me to believe we're in a contract here or on a response cost system, right? The information is indicating very heavily we're using a level system. You've got to give the information respect, right? The question is going to guide you towards the answer. You have to understand what the question is giving you and what it is asking. 107, when engaged in a self-management system, consequences can be delivered how? This is a tricky question because it kind of refers to the idea of self-reinforcement, which, depending on how you were taught, there's different ways to teach self-reinforcement because it's kind of a misnomer, right? You might have heard, well, you can't reinforce yourself, and it's not necessarily true, okay? It's just the way it's presented, okay? According to our text, though, and remember, for the exam, you've got to be black and white. So if we're using a self-management system, how can consequences be delivered, right? If it's self-management, well, we're choosing our consequences. So how can we deliver those consequences? A, directly. Sure, we can deliver our own consequences in a self-management system. B, indirectly. Can somebody else deliver consequences in a self-management system? 100%, okay? So consequences can be delivered either indirectly or directly in a self-management system. And remember that, all right? So don't get confused by the ideas of self-reinforcement and et cetera, okay? In a self-management system, consequences that you choose can be delivered directly by yourself or indirectly by someone else. So our answer here is going to be C, either indirectly or directly. You're in charge of 2 students who are receiving hours towards their BCBA certification. One of the students brings you supervision sheets for 2 and 3 months ago to sign. What should you do? All right, ethics question, administration question. You're a BCBA now. You've got to understand the ethical code. You got to understand the administrative side. The new ethical code includes a lot more specific language about different businesses and things, okay? As the field grows, it's becoming more and more important. So with all that said, right, you're in charge of 2 students receiving hours toward their certification. One student brings you supervision sheets from 2 to 3 months ago to sign. Essentially, you need to backdate these. What do? A, sign the sheets for her. So the question becomes, can you backdate supervision sheets? And the answer is no, right? We don't backdate supervision, okay? These need to be signed and produced within the month, okay? B, sign the sheets, but make a note there it's submitted late. Again, no. C, do not sign the sheets. Supervision sheets should not be backdated. Supervision sheets should never be backdated, all right? That's just the BACB's rule. D, remove her from the program altogether. No, these hours just wouldn't count. She has to redo them. So what do you need to do? Well, you don't sign the sheets. Supervision sheets aren't backdated. Remember, on the exam, we're black and white ethically, okay? If that's the rule, that's the rule. 109. If someone described a behavior to you and then wanted you to measure when that behavior occurs, what dimensional quantity of behavior would you use? Dimensional quantities are what? We have repeatability, we have temporal extent, we have temporal locus. Remember, our measurements are derivatives of these dimensional quantities. Repeatability is count and rate. Temporal extent is duration. Temporal locus is interresponse time and latency. In this case, somebody wants you to measure when the behavior occurs. Okay, so what dimensional quantity would that be? A, repeatability. Repeatability just says a behavior occurs again and again, right? You count it. Temporal extent is how long that behavior occurs for. Temporal locus says this is when the behavior occurs. That's why latency and interresponse time are part of temporal locus. It's a location and time, right? Interresponse time is not a dimensional quantity. It's a type of measurement. Our dimensional quantities are these three. Don't be confused or get confused on the exam. If they're asking for dimensional quantities, you're picking repeatability, temporal extent, or temporal locus. So if someone described a behavior to you and then wanted you to measure when that behavior occurred, what dimensional quantity would you use? Well, temporal locus. And then finally, 110, analyze the data from the table below. What would the average duration be based on time of occurrence? I would tell you up front, this question is a bit of a trick question, okay? It's meant to test, are you moving slowly? Are you guessing? Or are you actually thinking through these things, okay? Part of this is trusting yourself. Because when you get to a question like this, where you probably know the right answer, but you're going to have some doubt. You have to know, you have to trust your preparation. So we're looking at the data and finding average duration, okay, based on time of occurrence. So let's look at it. Occurrence 1 happens at 1 p.m., 2, 1:30, 3, 2 p.m., 4, 2:15. Do we have any idea about the duration or how long these lasted? No. We know when they happened. This happened at 1, 1:30, 2, and 2:15. But the first one could have happened for 5 minutes. The second one, 30 minutes. Third one, 2 seconds. There's no indication about duration. And without duration data, you can't find the average. So 25, 30, and 15 minutes for answer choices make no sense because we can't figure it out. The answer is D, cannot determine. Again, you have to trust that you've analyzed it correctly, you've interpreted it correctly, and then you got the best answer down. Excellent. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out behavioranalyst.study.com for our 3 practice exams, our task list study guide, and of course, our combo pack. When you purchase our combo pack, our 3 practice exams, you're going to get this 4th one for free when it does come out. Other than that, let us know when you pass. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.